ideas to flow. Steph and Joe are on the go, go, go. Sharing what we know from the classroom to the show. It's Steph and Joe on the go. Innovation, education, moving fast with dedication. Come along, let's start the flow. It's Steph and Joe on the go.
Good morning. Good morning. We are on the go. Are you on the go, Joe?
I am absolutely on the go. And before we keep going, I just want to tell you again, happy belated birthday. How was your birthday this past week?
Thank you. Thank you. It was great. Yeah, I had a lot of cake and cupcakes and celebrated, but I did work. We were talking about that this week of some people take off their birthday and some people work. Which person are you? I want to know. I feel like we should be social.
No, yeah, I go to work. Because I have friends that say, well, how come you don't take your birthday off? I go, well, when my birthday becomes a federal holiday and everybody gets it off, then I'll take it off. Until then, I'm going to get to work.
Yeah, but I think we should do a poll. I think we should figure out, like, do you take your birthday off or do you work? I feel like a lot of teachers will work. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, anytime you ask a teacher, is it easier to take a day off or just to go into work? They'll tell you it's easier to go into work because you got to make up all the stuff that you missed when you were gone. So I'm sure most teachers would go into work on their birthday.
Yeah, that is very true. Because it is. You have to like sub plans, then you have to deal with any behavior issues. It's a lot to take off. So I agree. I think a lot of people probably do go in.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's just the teacher mentality, right? Like we're trying to do best for our kids. We don't want our kids to fall behind. We don't want to fall behind on our lesson plans that we have planned. So even a lot of times if teachers are sick, they'll even go in. They're like, I'm just going to just bear it because I don't want to have to do all that extra work on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. Well, today we're not just talking about birthdays, but we're also going to be talking about the overwhelm. And maybe that's the overwhelm of all the resources, all the tools that you have in your classroom. Have you ever been overwhelmed, Joe?
Oh my goodness, absolutely, and that is a common thing for the cognitive mind to be overwhelmed. I mean, I always tell people, imagine if you walked into a mom and pop ice cream shop, and all they have is chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. You know exactly what flavor you're going to get. You don't even have to question it. Like I'm always going to pick vanilla. Like Steph, if you have those three choices, what are you going to pick?
A vanilla.
A vanilla, right? I mean, it's a blank slate. I like to do, they might have toppings, but vanilla is the way to go. My daughter Coletta would always choose chocolate. She's a chocolate girl. But if we go to Baskin Robbins, there's 31 flavors. And you're not going to choose vanilla because you're like, oh, there's so many other options than just plain vanilla. But your brain gets overwhelmed and you're constantly trying. And I don't know, maybe this, maybe that. And then always you buy the one that you think you want and you have buyer's remorse. Oh, I should have got the other one. Or you're envious of your partner next to you who has something that you're like, oh, that's even better. The conundrum of choice, the overwhelming nature of choice can really do a number on you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm always the chocolate cookie dough, usually is my second option because I like there's too many choices. And I usually try 3 of them, right? Because you're like, I gotta try them. But then I always end up with cookie dough because I just get too afraid, I think, of some of those or overwhelmed by all of the choices.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then you go back to what you feel comfortable with. I mean, think about like if you go to if you have a common restaurant you go to and you're like, I'm going to try something different. And you go, you're like, I just don't want to try something different. I'm going to get that burrito bowl because that is a tried and true meal and it always works for me. I don't want to try something else and not like it, right? I think that is very similar to how we can view tools that are coming out for classroom use, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because again, teachers get so comfortable with the tool that they love. And then again, like you were saying, there's all these other tools or these other choices out there. And you're like, I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people, don't get comfortable with the tool. Get comfortable with a strategy, right? Because Tools come and go. We just found that out this summer with Flip, right? I mean, all the people, and even Jamboard too. Everybody gets comfortable with these tools and they rely on these tools and they build in these tools, and then it goes away and they're like, what do I do now? Right? It's like, well, your strategy is still there. You just have to find another tool that meets the needs of your strategy. And I'm sure people have found some alternatives to those tools, but it still doesn't hinder the sadness of losing one of your favorite tools, right?
Yeah, I think too, I love that idea of starting with the strategy. And so, for example, maybe let's go with Jamboard, right? So my strategy with Jamboard was collaboration. And so some of the things that you have to think about when you have collaboration is, I remember working with a second grade class and they deleted each other's work, each other's slides, and it was a hot mess, right? And so I think, again, it's important to start with that strategy and think about what procedures need to be in place in order for that strategy to work. And then whenever you're replacing it with any other tool, it's going to just be smooth sailing because you have your strategy, that foundation, and your procedures in place.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I people would always ask me, well, why wouldn't you just use Google Slides for that? I'm like, well, there's a couple things. If you want more of like video and media and text, Google Slides is a great option. If you want more digital inking and that kind of stuff, Jamboard was the way to go. But I can easily do anything in Jamboard in Google Slides. And so for losing Jamboard really wasn't that big of a deal for me as it was for a lot of other educators. But Steph, I have to tell you, going into a classroom and knowing there's going to be chaos in a collaborative slide deck is the funniest thing in the world. I've been actually doing that in classes this year with teachers who have never done a collaborative slide deck before. And I said, are you ready for chaos? And they're like, what do you mean? I go, just watch. Just watch. Kids are going to change the theme by accident. They're going to think they're changing their background and change everybody's background. They're going to delete a slide, add a slide, push everybody's slide down one. It's going to be chaos, but it's okay because that's how we learn. And that's how we have to start, right? I just love it. It's knowing the chaos is coming is better than being surprised by it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are some strategies to it, right? When we implement these new tools or new strategies in our classroom, giving that play time. So for example, I'm a fan of Edu Protocols, and I'll be like, okay, if we're going to do thin slides today, it should take maybe 7 minutes total. But the first time or the first couple of times we do it, plan for 15 to 20. I think that's important for educators to remember, like, even though the first time I do this strategy or use this tool, it's going to take more time. But the more that you rinse and repeat over and over again, the faster your students are going to get at using that tool and the more comfortable you're going to feel. But it is uncomfortable, that feeling of like, I don't know how this is going to go. And oh my gosh, I just wasted 20 minutes of instructional time. And it wasn't even on instruction. It was on, soft skills or whatever that we're working on.
No, I agree. I think one of the things that teachers have to realize is when you're introducing a new tool to your classroom or even to yourself into your your ed tech toolbox, you have to remember that you're not going to use it perfectly the first time. And you have to know it's going to be messy and there's going to be growing pains. And I think, that's the problem when you go to a conference and somebody showcases a strategy to you and maybe they have a video of how they work it with their class and it looks seamless. And then the teacher tries it for the first time in their class and they're like, it's not as clean. It's not as easy. It must be my fault. It's because the presenter's not showing you the messiness they had to go through to get there. And I think that is the importance of a technology coach on campus. They are the ones that are there to show you the strategy and to kind of like be your safety net when things go wrong, to kind of calm the teacher down, calm the class down, and reassure the teacher, this is normal. It's going to take time to get that seamless feel, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think as a tech coach too, something that you have to consider is it's okay that you don't know all the tools either. because there are so many tools out there. And when I was working with over 400 educators, you just can't know all the tools that each individual teacher is using, right? Like you've got your core that you're like, okay, this can be used with this, this, and this. But when you've got so many teachers, and then they're like, have you used this? And I'm like, yeah, I touched it one time like 5 years ago, right? But then it's a whole new product than what it's been. So I think it's really important to keep in mind, and it's actually an ISTE educator standard, is where you're able to take a tool, take a strategy, and try it and teach it with your students. And I was reading that standard when I was getting certified, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize that this was, a skill. This was something that sometimes my teachers enjoyed me not knowing. And I would just have to be honest and be like, I don't know that tool. I've opened it 4 years ago, but I haven't used it since. I would love to sit down with you and learn it alongside you and your students. I think that is hard sometimes for us to say, but I think it's appreciated. And then you can learn with the students, with the other teacher, or however your setup is. But again, ask that coach to come in, because that person is really going to support you right alongside of you and be an extra hand if things go wrong.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the roles as a coach is a teacher will come in and explain what they want to do. And as the coach, you can lay out some different pathways based on the strategies and the tools that are available to them. And a lot of times I get the comment, how do you expect me to know all these tools? And I tell them, I don't. That's my job. I have the time to do the research. I have the time to do the playing around. I have the time to get messy with these and then bring them to you and show them to you in a clean and effective way. That's my job as the tech coach, is to bring the tools to you. And so you're not out there searching, because you're right. There's so many tools out there. And if you don't know what they are or what they do or how they fit, it can be absolutely overwhelming. And let's not even talk about the pantheon of AI tools that are out there that are cropping up every single day. It's just adding on top of the stress of what people think they need to know. And so, Steph, I have a question for you. So how do you kind of narrow down the pack? How do you narrow down to some tools, some fundamental tools that you love to share with educators from the hundreds that are already out there?
Yeah, for me, it really does start with kind of accessibility. Is it accessible for students to use? I usually like to make sure, is there a read aloud? Is there ways for them to zoom in and out? Is it easy for them to use? If it's going to take multiple times to teach them something, or I need to teach them the tool without the concept, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know about this, right? And so I think it goes to ease of use.
No, I think you're the first impression is always the biggest. And if you show a tool that is just so super complicated, they're gonna be like, I can't do this. It's too complicated. And I think simplicity is beautiful. So that's what I loved about Jamboard, right? Was its simplicity. It was simple. It was effective. It did the job, and it was as easy to push out as any other of the Google Workspace applications. And some of these Jamboard replacements have so many bells and whistles. It's not the same tool, and it feels overwhelming. And when you try to share that with a teacher, they're like, that's too much. It's too much. It's too much. And so I think you're right. Finding the tools that are effective, that have accessibility built into them, and have a simplistic starting point, I think it's exceptionally important to know those tools and share those tools.
Now, what about the teacher? This was me, Joe, my first 3 years of teaching. The teacher that uses all the tools and doesn't really stick with, the few. It's always, this tool 1 week, this tool the next week. Like, how do you coach that teacher? Because again, I was that kind of teacher at the beginning of my career where I was like, everything's shiny, everything is free. I think at the beginning of my career, there were a lot of free tools when I first started using technology. So how do you coach that teacher that's new, right? Shiny, shiny, shiny.
Well, I do the Alton Brown approach. You remember Alton Brown, Steph, from the Food Channel?
Yeah.
His statement is always, don't buy a tool for one specific purpose. Kitchen, find a tool that has multiple purposes, or a tool that's not meant for one purpose, but you can make it useful for that purpose. So you don't have as many cluttering it up. And so I would ask the teacher at that point, here's 5 tools that you've used this week. Is there one of them that can replace 3 of them? Right? Because I know new and shiny is fun. It's fun to play with new things. But I want you to imagine on the student end having to learn how to use these tools over and over and never getting 100% great at them. That could be difficult, right? Again, it comes down to the conundrum of choice. When your teachers have so many tools available to them to choose from, you have some that use all of them and never become good at any of them. Or you have teachers that find one tool and stick with it because they're comfortable with it. I think the answer lies somewhere in between those two endpoints.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it's like finding that balance of, okay, getting your students and, again, like finding those tools, because sometimes you're like, well, this tool does this, but this other tool does 5 other things. Like, so it's, again, kind of looking at that and making that decision. Another huge thing for me is student privacy, making sure that the data is safe, right? And it's okay for students to use. I know that's been a huge movement recently in education too.
Yeah, I mean, I think making sure that I was actually talking to my friend Delane about this, where we were looking at all these new AI tools coming out, but how do we know that they're following student data privacy laws, COPA, FERPA, SIPA, all the acronyms? How do we know? And we had a fun little time grabbing all the terms of service, throwing them into a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini, and asking it questions. What should we be concerned about on student privacy? What are the student privacy rules and regulations they have in place? Is there anything that stands out that we should bring to our technology directors? And that was fun. That was fun because it brought some things to our attention that we didn't necessarily see right off the bat. But it could be daunting, right? So I highly recommend, if you're an educator looking at a new tool, find your tech coach, find your coordinator of ed tech or director of ed tech, and see if they've already been approved. Here in California, we have a great organization called CITE, California IT and Education, and they have a dashboard of all the tools that they've already looked at that follow student data privacy. And then they also have a dashboard that says if a school district has created a contract with them that ensures that, and then you can piggyback off of that contract. So it's a really great resource, but you, the teacher, wouldn't know that exists. So definitely reach out to your coordinators or coaches and see if any tool you're using does meet those privacy policies, because again, that's another layer we don't expect you to know.
Yeah, and I think another great thing to do is, if you're on social media and you're like, oh my gosh, that looked really cool, that lesson plan that this teacher did. First off, reach out to them, ask them for more questions, or ask them, hey, what templates or what ideas do you have to make this run smoother if you were to do this again? And another thing is, sometimes don't try at large group. There were times where I would just pull 3 kids or 2 kids or 1 kid and try it just with them first. Like, can they log in? Were there any hiccups? Was anything blocked? Because, I mean, a lot of districts will block extensions, they'll block different websites, different parts on the websites. So again, if I saw something that I was interested in using, I would always kind of start with like 1 kid. And it was usually my tech savvy kid, just to be like, okay, can you log in here? What issues do you see? So again, start small. It doesn't have to be your entire class is on this website all at the same time. You could pull small groups to work with them and get them logged into the program that you're interested in trying.
No, I love that strategy, right? Because that does lower the stress level because it's not the entire class messing up. And as we all know, even if a tool has been approved by your district, has been attached to your single sign-on, whether it's Clever or Schoology or whatever you have as your learning management system, there's always going to be, for some reason, that one kid who on their computer it's blocked and you can't figure it out. It's going to stress you out. So yeah, starting with small groups to kind of shake out the bugs, I think is a fantastic strategy to use.
Any other strategies you have, Joe?
Well, there's just a couple. We talked about this on last episode, but I always say have a regular filter that you use to weed out the tools that are just not going to work for you, right? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. My filter is always inspect, redirect, make correct. The tools that I look for, they need to have a dashboard or information that I am receiving data on whether my students are understanding the material in real time. And it's not after they've hit submit. It should be while they're working, I can see that work in front of me, or I can see the data of what questions they're getting right and what questions they're getting wrong in real time. I need to be able to inspect their knowledge in real time. And when I notice they have a misconception or they're doing something wrong, I need to stop them, right? I need to say, hey, wait, we are doing this whole section wrong. Let's all pause. I'm going to pause the app. I'm going to stop the app. I'm going to get your attention. And we're going to go over this misconception one more time. And then after we've done that, they can go back to the app and make those corrections, right? So if a tool does not meet my inspect, redirect, make correct model, I don't even look at it because it doesn't meet my needs. So I highly recommend you either use that model or that filter, or find a filter that you can rely on to weed out the tools you won't use. And lastly, I always say an ed tech tool is like a tool you would use to build something, right? If you're building something in your house, you already know what your end result is wanting to look like. And so you go to Lowe's or you go to Home Depot to buy a tool that's going to help you complete your project, right? So you already have the end result, the pedagogical practice in mind. I always say nobody goes to Lowe's and buys a hammer and says, ooh, what can I hit with this, right? It's always, I need to buy this hammer because I have a nail that I need to nail into this wall. There's a purpose for this tool. So always have a purpose for the tool, not find a tool and then look for a purpose.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I know when technology was first kind of coming out, we were all like, oh, this is really cool and shiny, right? But now I feel like a lot of us are like, okay, we don't have the time. So we really do have to focus in on what can the tool do to support our classroom and the instruction, right? And I think that, again, it's just huge because teachers, you don't have enough time. So find the ones that are going to suit your strategies to help you in the long run. And I think a lot of AI tools can do that. And so again, it's sorting through which ones are going to meet your needs. And again, maybe I steal Joe's, well, he said it's not stealing. I consider it stealing. But still to inspect, redirect, make correct strategy can be really helpful to know, does this tool help me do that? Does this tool help me inspect my students' work? Can I redirect what I need them to do? And am I, able to make correct? Can they go back and find their errors and maybe communicate back and reflect on what they did wrong?
No, I mean that's fantastic. And as we're closing this out, I want our listeners to realize we haven't really told you or recommended to you any tools because we don't know what you're trying to do, right? We're giving you strategies to select the best tool for you. This episode wasn't about mentioning tools that you can use in your class. Maybe later on in a few episodes, we'll have a specific instance or a specific use case and then provide you with some recommended tools during that episode. But this episode is not about which tools are the best. It's how to select the tools that are best for you in the lesson or instance you want to use them. So I think that should be freeing to everybody listening, in that even though there are hundreds of tools out there, you're the one that gets to decide the use case, and you're the one who gets to decide if it's useful. So never let somebody tell you this is the best tool for your use, because you're the one that's going to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I love that. So again, go back. We're going to have maybe a poll on social media, and you need to vote on, do you share your birthday or take off your birthday, or do you work on your birthday? We need to know that. And then let us know too, what tools or what strategies do you use, and what tools help support that? So again, kind of reflect and think about that. We would love to have that conversation with you. So feel free to share on social media, or you can just send us a DM. Again, we would love to just have that conversation alongside of you.
Excellent.
All right,
I can't wait. I can't wait to see those results. I want to see how many people take their birthday off. I really do.
I know. I'm really curious. Okay, so I know you got to go, right? Because we're on the go. So thanks for joining us for another episode, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, everybody.